Hey friends, welcome to Bokeh, a podcast exploring the ever-blurring lines between the personal and business lives of professional photographers. This is your host, Nathan Holritz, and I'm happy that you can join me in connecting with photographers and entrepreneurs as we discuss photography, business, and that sometimes messy thing we call life. This podcast is brought to you by Milu, the simplest way for photographers and coordinators to collaborate on shot lists and timelines for weddings, parties, and other amazing events. Visit Milu, MIILU.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Photographers Edit, custom image editing for the professional photographer. Visit photographersedit.com. All right, Bokeh Podcast listeners, we are back for another episode. It is a little bit of a crazy week. I just got back in from California, and this is almost like a reprieve to be able to sit down and have a conversation. And I'm having a conversation today with a new guest, Nathan Armstrong. Great first name, by the way, Nathan.
Well, yeah. When I followed the Bokeh Podcast and I saw your handle in the bio, I was like, wow, I need to reach out to this guy just for namesake, if nothing else.
100%. Well, and are you actually based in Nashville?
I'm based in Memphis, actually.
Okay.
So we're in Nashville quite a bit for work, but based in Memphis.
Okay.
So.
I actually had the chance to go to Memphis not very long ago with my son. I hadn't been in years. And to be honest, my first impression ever of Memphis wasn't that great. I went back with my son a few months ago, and I was really impressed. Like, it's got so much character. I love the waterfront. We were there for a concert just very briefly, but it was a nice time.
It was. It's come back a lot, especially in the downtown area in the past few years. And,
yeah.
But we love it, and it kind of has a small town feel to it. We live in one of the suburbs, but obviously we're in the city quite a bit for work and that sort of thing. And we love it. So we enjoy traveling quite a bit, and it's nice to get out, but we love coming back home. So.
That's cool. Well, yeah, it actually reminds me of Chattanooga a bit, and with the waterfront, certainly not a real big downtown, so it's not overwhelming. And to your point about the development in Memphis, we've seen a similar thing here in Chattanooga, and it just makes it a really cool place to hang out. So anyway, I was impressed. I had to comment on that. But you said you're married, correct? And your wife's name is Laura?
I am. Yes, we got married last May, so we've been married a little over a year. And she runs a wedding photography business full time. And so we kind of separated our kind of tasks a little bit in the business. When we got married, we were kind of both doing everything. And she kind of runs the wedding stuff full time, and I second shoot with her. But I'm kind of focusing on the entertainment side of things, obviously. So it's a lot of fun to kind of be able to talk shop with your spouse. So
it is. I mean, there's the relatability factor there, which plays a huge role in relationships, right? You can relate on a particular topic, especially as big a one as your career. But I think it's nice too to have some variety, and the fact that you each have your hands in a different genre is really great. But you mentioned entertainment photography, and that is what we're going to be delving into today. We haven't really touched much on entertainment photography on the Bokeh Podcast, 300 plus episodes. So I appreciate you making time to come on and share with us today. And let's just kind of jump right in. And I think this is very relevant to our conversation currently, to talk about brand position. You are in the Memphis area, which has pretty significant musical history from what I understand, and not very far away from Nashville. You talked about spending time in Nashville as well. How do you differentiate yourself from other photographers in the entertainment side of things, particularly music or band or concert photography? What is your business's brand position?
Yeah, for us, Nathan, it's really three things. And those things we've kind of developed over the past 5 years, and their speed, trust, and relentless consistency. And, speed is really just the fact that we provide live coverage of large scale music and entertainment events across the US. And the trust, we've worked really hard and continue to work hard to build trust with promoters and artists and creative directors in the music industry. And then, relentless consistency, it's really simply no excuses. And, no matter what the roadblock or speed bump is that gets thrown in front of us, we deliver every time. And people have come to expect that from us, which is fun. And, we have, sub points and those things that kind of drive the vision home. But that's kind of the 15-second answer there.
No, I love it actually. I'm a huge fan of somebody's ability to be able to be concise in the way that they communicate. It's a weakness of mine actually at times, but the way that particularly the way you're able to communicate what your brand stands for, it's so important that we're able to do that as photographers in a very succinct manner, because nobody, and I'm continue to be reminded of this very fact, even again in the way that I communicate with others. People just don't have time these days, and it's not necessarily anything personal. They're distracted. There are a million other things going on. In the case of photography, if somebody's searching for a photographer, photographers are a dime a dozen these days. And right. So we need to be able to effectively communicate how we are different and truly different than our so-called competition, the people around us, the photographers around us. And so I love Absolutely. The specificity and again, just how concise you were. I'd like to go back to this, though. You talked about speed, live coverage. When you're delivering that live coverage, are you then handing images over right away to that band or to whoever's in charge of that particular event?
Yeah. So in the beginning, we were there was a handful of us, and I say us, photographers in the industry that were able to edit and go to social in under 5 to 10 minutes. So
wow.
The photo would get shot and we would edit it. And then it would go to social or to whoever's running the social in 5 to 10 minutes. So that was kind of how we got our foot in the door in the industry. And now that we're doing award shows with live TV broadcasts, the game is to keep up with the TV broadcast, really.
Wow.
And, you have a window, obviously you're not going to have the photo up of a live broadcast the moment that it happens, but you've kind of got a window of relevancy, if you will, where that image has to go out inside that window or you've kind of lost the attention to it. And so speed is super important. It's kind of the thing that got us in the door. Before you have those relationships, you kind of have to have something that sets you apart. And that was one of the things that we were able to bank on.
Wow. Okay. So, competing with the TV cameras, has that become a little bit stressful knowing that that's your competition? The fact that you have to take something that's a still image on a card and transfer that to whoever the end client is, that you're competing with something as immediate as the TV cameras, or does it just become kind of the norm?
No, it's definitely stressful, especially when you're doing something as big as an award show, because, they'll hire 2 to 3 photographers to come in and, 2 to 3 editors, an editor per photographer. And, you and your teammates, that's where they're getting their content from. And so if you don't deliver, they're not going to have content. And so I joke with Laura, she comes with me to edit when we do award shows.
Okay.
And I joke that it's more stressful on her because she's the one who has to edit it. I just shoot it like I would anything else. And she's the one who has to turn it around. But yeah, it can get stressful, but if you stay caught up, that's the thing. Getting behind is where you get kind of in a mess.
Oh, I can only imagine. Well, and I have to give context to this conversation, further context, I should say, and share your Instagram account. So if everybody listening in, if you just go to Nathan Armstrong, all one word, just like it sounds, you can see examples, beautiful examples at that of Nathan's work. And it really is, it's wonderful. And I love the variety of it too, and the combination of color and black and white. And then of course, highlighting your relationship with Laura as well. It's really, really lovely account. So we'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. You talked about trust. How do you, when we're talking about the idea of building trust, it's ultimately really rooted in a strong relationship, right? So how do you go about developing relationships with people who are used to having somebody try to, develop a pseudo relationship for the sake of business, right? How do you kind of weed through that and develop genuine relationships?
Yeah. And I'll go back to the podcast on this. You did an episode with Chris Evans a couple weeks ago that I listened to when I was traveling last week, and his points were spot on. I was listening to that, and I actually sent it to a couple of friends to listen to. He's in Maui and he's got a really successful wedding business. And he talked about creating genuine personal relationships with his clients and with vendors in Maui. And that's really been, from what I heard, the key to his success. And I think it works the same way in the entertainment industry. For me, trust is really made up of character and that competency we talked about. And so, competency is really just we deliver what the client wants when they want it with that relentless consistency that we talked about. And then, character is just they'll never have to worry about putting us in high pressure situations like we talked about delivering speed. And, that also includes, for these award shows and things, they can put us in front of an A-list celebrity or an A-list talent and not have to worry about, us doing something stupid.
Yeah.
And that will, tarnish the relationship that they have with the talent. And so, I think over time, being put in those situations and consistently delivering and consistently, showing that competency and character is how we kind of build that. But I definitely think that genuine word is good because, going out to dinner with people who you do work with, for me, is super important because I want to know, how their kids are and how their families are and those things and really have those genuine relationships beyond just work.
But I love how underlying what you do, I mean, it's become clear immediately in our conversation, underlying what you do are values, like having a set of values. And you, I mean, to keep things as simple as possible on a day-to-day basis, I mean, there seems like there's so much to keep up with in our business, and it seems like it might be complicated at times. But the reality is, if we just simply have a solid set of values that drives everything that we do, that makes all the difference in the world. And it's funny how something as simple as being consistent in the way that we engage with others, or consistent in the way that we take care of a client. We don't make excuses in the end. Our focus is on serving that client and making sure they're taken care of. Simple things like this, it seems like it would be obvious, but it's not, unfortunately. And I love that at the center of what you're doing are these very simple yet powerful values that drive what you do.
Yeah, and I think like you mentioned, it makes it a lot easier to make decisions because you've got an outline, whenever that you run every decision through.
So true.
And keeps it consistent.
Yeah,
so.
I've mentioned this in the podcast before. I'm a pretty emotional guy, and just to kind of further be a little bit more open here, I've struggled with the process of making choices over the years, and I can trace it back to my childhood and the way that I was raised, and not only that, the kind of religious environment that I was brought up in, and the idea of making a choice became this very stressful thing in which I didn't have a lot of confidence. And one of the things that I've come back to on a very simple level, we're talking about values, is having a baseline set of values that as you were talking about, Nathan, that having a set of values to kind of to go back to filter our decision-making process through. At the end of the day, if there are questions, if there's been some type of an emotional roller coaster that's happened in the day, it's just really helpful. I have 8 in particular that I literally have I'm looking at right now on the home screen of my phone, that just act as a point of centering, if you will. And right. So I think this is a great example for our listeners. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I love the simple beauty and yet power of living by a set of values, letting those values drive the way that we function in our personal lives, letting that then trickle down to the way that we run our businesses. And it really can make all the difference in the world. And I appreciate you sharing that. By the way, I wanted to see how this was communicated on a website. I know you've got a website for the wedding business, for Laura's wedding business, which, by the way, for everybody listening in again, is nlaweddings.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Do you have a website for your entertainment photography as well?
It's actually getting rebuilt this fall. So
okay.
We actually just started the process of it. So we actually took it down about a week ago and we're getting it redesigned. So it will be nathanarmstrong.com when it goes up. We should have it up towards the middle to end of November.
Okay, cool.
But we've done a lot of new stuff in the past year and a half. So it was kind of time for a redesign.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally get that. And there's something kind of fun about hitting the reset button on a website too. But we'll go ahead and link to that in the show notes. For those of you listening in, you may be listening to this a couple months later and you'll be able to check out that new website as well. What I was getting to, though, is how you communicate these principles through your website. I don't know if that was something that you were doing previously or you have plans for that, but these are really powerful ideas. And ultimately, I think somebody's going to I mean, when they finally have the opportunity to work with you and experience you living these out in your business, that's going to be the most impactful. But I'm wondering if you're going to be able to communicate those ideas effectively through your website as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes through with just showcasing the clients that we've been able to work with.
Okay.
I think that these values, when you go to somebody's website, and whether it's a wedding website or another photographer that you're going to go and at least I do, I always look at their past clients and I want to see who they've worked with. And somebody that's had the opportunity to work with, names like Google or Apple or Microsoft or, big names like that, to me, that communicates a level of trust and competency that these large companies that have a lot on their namesake are trusting this person to communicate their brand.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of that comes through with those past clients. And then, we also are going to do one of the things that we're going to highlight heavily on the new site is stories. And so more so than just putting, a page full of images, we're going to have a story for almost every image. And so it'll be, a photo of talent and, they're on the red carpet and, it'll say, hey, this was shot at this place, in this place. And if there's a backstory to it, that'll be told too.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in stories and the emotional connection that you have with a brand when you start kind of reading about the stories that they've been able to help create.
Yep.
And I think that those two things kind of really communicate our values.
That's interesting. I mean, your work can speak for itself. And again, for those of you listening in, check out Nathan's Instagram account. It's just Nathan Armstrong. And I mean, you see the types of artists that you're photographing, and it does speak for itself. But at the same time, when I think about websites and testimonials, it seems, honestly, I've avoided it on the Photographer's Edit website, for example. And I've had suggestions from my team, or we've had conversations about putting testimonials on the site, and we have a few there now. But the idea of a testimony on a website, it almost seems in some ways contrived. And maybe I'm just a bit of a cynic, but you go to some websites and you're like, oh, they totally created that. It looks like a stock photo and a little bit of text to go along with it that they created. And it's hard. It's just not believable. And the last thing that I want is anybody questioning the legitimacy of the testimonials. I want actual people to be speaking for themselves. But when you do something like you're describing, which is to tell the story behind the image. I mean, it's cool enough that you've got a picture of some of these artists that you do here. And I mean, I'm looking at a picture from the Ryman Auditorium that you photographed. It looks like back in a few weeks ago, back in August. And some other images here with, Taylor Swift is standing there on the red carpet. And you've got another one right here with Drake. And I mean, the list goes on. These are really, really cool. But then if you can attach a story to each of those, now it feels way more legitimate. It feels like, oh, he was there behind the scenes. He actually knows what's going on. He was a part of this. And he's cool enough to have photographed Drake. And that's kind of cool. So I love that you're going to go in that direction, and I'm sure it'll create a sense of legitimacy and also connection that you were describing, which is really good. I know that we spent, for you listeners, we've spent a lot of time in this section, but there's certainly a lot of interesting things to talk about. We'll keep moving here though. And I'm curious, Nathan, first of all, how long have you been in business?
I started doing entertainment photography back in 2015.
Okay.
So it'll be 5 years next year.
Cool. So you're relatively fresh to the game, but I'd be curious, and this is something that we ask most of our guests, what has been the most important lesson that you've learned, or what would be the thing that you'd first share with a fellow photographer if you had the opportunity?
I think in the relationships that we've had with clients and talent and those things, for me, it's really just not being too good to ask for help or advice. And I've kind of learned that I make more good decisions if I'm willing to swallow pride and ask for advice than if I'm not. And again, going back to creating those genuine personal relationships and Chris's episode on the Bokeh Podcast, having those relationships is important in a work environment, but being able to go out to eat. I mean, I'm thinking of an example. The last time we took a client out to dinner and it was in the middle of a shoot and we had a little break and we just went and grabbed a burger at Shake Shack and talked for a half hour. And those types of things are more exciting to me than sometimes a surface level work relationship, because you feel like you get to know somebody. And so I think creating those genuine personal relationships and then not being afraid to ask for advice and swallow your pride has been kind of the two big things there.
Well, and this is great. I love that you're mentioning Chris, and shout out to Chris, who not only communicated the significance of the relationship and what it takes to create that relationship, but has been one of the few people since I've had them on the podcast who has made a concerted effort to keep in contact, even if it's just something as simple as commenting on an Instagram story that I post, for example. He makes his presence known. We've had a phone conversation actually just the other day. We're talking about a potential collaboration in the future. But he means what he says. He's not just kind of spouting these ideas off. And right. It really is important at the end of the day to take the time. The cool thing is, if we're willing to kind of set aside our ego and insecurities and so forth, like the idea of getting to take a client out for dinner, sit down and have an actual conversation, it's actually a really great thing. It could be a lot of fun. And so we're technically working, but ultimately we're focusing on the relationships that will make an impact on our business for the long run, developing that trust that you were talking about, which is great. Asking for advice. Man, this is a good reminder for me, certainly. Don't ever hesitate. And there's so much information out there these days, but to actually have an individual conversation with somebody and say, hey, what would you think in this particular case? I actually just had the opportunity to do this in the last day or two with our operations manager, who's got significant experience in the corporate world, and was looking at a situation and said, hey, what would you say to this? And it's nice to have somebody else's perspective in that case. So I think that's really, really great advice too. Talk to me about time. And you're a newlywed, so this is particularly a poignant point of conversation. But how do you and your wife create time for each other amidst kind of what can be the chaos of running a photography business?
It's been interesting listening to the Bokeh Podcast, and I've probably listened to 10 or 20 episodes since I just recently have gotten tuned in, so I'm kind of in the process of going back and listening to the backlog of it.
Oh, cool.
But 90% of the guests that you have mention block scheduling.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing for us. And so, when we have an event to shoot, or we have an edit that needs to get done quick, or we have a client meeting, those things are absolutely blocked, scheduled. And then one thing that I do that's probably a little bit different and maybe considered a little less organized is I kind of block out time in my schedule to accomplish to-do list tasks. And so I have a to-do list on my computer and my phone, and it's kind of sorted by priority. And the things that go on that are like, hey, I need to update, change out a few photos on the website, or I need to send a handwritten note to this person, or I need to text this person back or email this person back. And those things are, quick things. I can knock, 5 or 10 of them off in a half hour, but they don't necessarily need, a whole block of time. But that to-do list has been super helpful. And, as I'm driving and thinking of things, I can have Siri put it on my list and that kind of thing. So I don't forget things as I think of them, but that's been super helpful. Yeah.
The update, I don't know if you've updated to iOS 13, but they updated the reminders app and turned it into a little bit more of an actual task and project management system, which is really cool. I kind of want to experiment with it a little bit more, especially with the integration with Siri. I've been using Todoist, which is a task and project manager now for quite some time. There is some integration with Siri. I think maybe with the Shortcuts app, I can create additional integration potentially and make it easier to just speak the tasks in there. But I like the combination of time blocking with task and project management because I think just the combination of that, the flexibility innate to that approach means that you are getting, the task and project manager for me, partially, one of the biggest benefits is a place just to kind of unload the things that need to be done. And that means that I'm not going to remember them. So the idea that I would schedule time for an individual task is not a reality. But if I can come back to that task list at a certain time and focus on knocking out a few tasks, as you pointed out, Nathan, I think that's a great thing. So the notion of time blocking for task management is a really, really great idea. Nobody suggested that as of yet on the podcast. I think it's a great idea. One of the things that I have in my daily schedule, things have been more chaotic as of late, but is a time for focusing on 3 MITs, most important tasks. Those are tasks that are proactive on my list, that are proactive, that are going to move my business forward in some way. And I feel like if I can get at least 3 done in a day, even 1 or 2 really big ones, then that means that I have gotten something done that has moved my business forward. And then the rest of the day is kind of gravy almost. And
right.
I think it's a nice balance. We're not time blocking in 15-minute segments and feeling like we need to work for 12 hours straight. But we have certain goals in mind for that particular day. We have time blocked for those various goals, including potentially a few tasks. And ideally, those tasks are proactive in nature. They move our business forward. I think it's a great combination. It's a great piece of advice for our listeners.
Yeah, and you asked specifically about the newlywed piece, and we've in Memphis and Tennessee as a whole, we've kind of noticed that there's several husband and wife photo teams specifically in the wedding industry. So I'll speak to that for a second. One of the tactic that we use, because we run the business together as a whole, it's really easy for us to go out to dinner and go on a date and talk work the whole time.
Yeah.
Because we enjoy that, and so one thing that we've done is we live in one of the suburbs of Memphis, and we have a nice 2-mile walk path that we can do a loop to the house. And what we'll do is we try to go on walks at least once a day, and we'll designate walks as work walks or no work walks.
That's great.
And so if it's a no work walk, work talk is off limits. And it really has allowed us, because when you aren't allowed to talk about work, and a lot of times those things are forefront in our mind, it forces us to really ask, how are you doing? How are you doing as a person? Yeah. And that's been super helpful to us and kind of getting us in the right frame of mind and that kind of thing in the first year of marriage. So,
well, I think variety, I mean, you hear that cliche phrase, variety is the spice of life, but I think it's the spice of a relationship too. It's what helps, or part of what helps keep a relationship interesting. Right. I think I've alluded to Esther Perel a number of times here on the podcast, and this is certainly not a relationship podcast, but I'm fascinated by the philosophy that she brings to bear about relationships, particularly long-term romantic relationships. And if we want to maintain that excitement, that spark in a long-term romantic relationship, one of the things that will help encourage that is variety. So the idea that we're always kind of doing the same thing or talking about the same thing or doing the same thing, especially when you run a business together, it may seem exciting for the time being, but over the long run could potentially create some boredom and some frustration. And so having variety in the conversation, it's interesting. You point out the idea of making a conversation off limits to work. What's interesting for me anyway, is it forces me to be a more interesting person too. Like if all I can do is speak to work, and this is kind of one thing that I do all the time, how boring is that? How boring am I as a conversationalist, as an individual to my significant other or to other people? And so it kind of forces me to be a better conversationalist, to show interest in somebody else in that way and make them feel good about themselves, but then also just to be a more interesting person that goes beyond business. So I actually have something to talk about.
Absolutely. So, and we're in the first year, so I'm sure that there's a lot to learn, obviously, but that's been helpful to us in the first year. So
that's great. I think that's a really smart move. Certainly speaking from experience as well. Talk to me about an impactful business self-help book, maybe even a podcast that has made a big difference in your life and or business in the last few years.
Yeah, I had trouble picking one, so I've got 3 quick ones.
Oh, that's great.
The first one is kind of a fun one. So Bobby Bones he's an iHeartRadio personality, and he has a talk show, kind of country based. He lives in Nashville, and he started a podcast called Bobby Cast. And what the premise of it is he'll have these artists or industry executives over to his house that he's become friends with through doing the radio show. Okay. And they kind of just have candid conversations and tell stories about the industry. And it's been super helpful just to kind of, you go shoot an artist and you've listened to an hour podcast of him kind of just telling stories. You feel like you can connect a little bit better to what they're doing.
Interesting.
And, one of the best ones that I listened to recently, he had I believe it was the CEO of Warner Music Nashville on, and he talked about the story of how Stapleton met Timberlake and how they did the CMA Fest performance of Drink You Away. I believe that was 2015. But he goes in and tells stats about how much music they sold during the time they were playing that song live on TV. It's super fascinating.
Yep.
So that one's a great one. And then
and just to kind of highlight what you're saying, you're ultimately talking about having additional context for the conversations, the interactions, the relationships that you're going to develop in your field, right?
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
huge.
Yeah. And it's also, it's just, stories to have in your back pocket when you go have conversations that people can relate to in the field too. Which is fun. So the second one is the Dave Ramsey Show. And my wife and I kind of use some, not all of his personal finance stuff, but he does quite a bit of stuff on business as well. And kind of just the idea that businesses can start without debt. And kind of his deal in that is slow and steady wins the race. And he talks specifically about gear, whether it be for a construction company or in our case, photography industry. He says, rent until you can afford to pay cash for the stuff that you need to buy. And that's been super helpful for us, just as we've, started the business, especially after we've gotten married and, not had debt over our head and that sort of thing, and been able to, give and make decisions without that. And that's been a lot of fun. So
I can imagine. And again, I speak from experience here. Financial stress on a marriage can be debilitating. And I know that's common knowledge, but it's when you actually experience it firsthand, man, it's really, really tough. So I love that you guys are prioritizing just a healthy financial life as a couple. I think that's going to make all the difference in the world. We'll link to both the Bokeh Cast and Dave Ramsey websites in the show notes. And then you said you had a third one as well?
Yeah, the third one is really just, we talked about these values and, my faith plays a huge role in the culture that we established in the business. Yeah. And I kind of listened to several podcasts in this realm, but one of my favorites has been Passion City Church, DC. And so, Atlanta, people have probably heard of Louis Giglio. He's kind of big in the Christian world, but Passion City Church is one of their plants. Ben Stewart does their talks, and it's been really helpful as we've kind of established those values that we talked at length about earlier.
And is it a podcast that they do, or is it a broadcast of their? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a podcast. So it's Passion City Church DC is what I searched in the Apple Podcast app to find it.
Nice. All right, we'll link to that in the show notes as well. I really appreciate you sharing those with us. Let's shift gears a little bit though and talk about photography, more specifically an unusual item in your camera bag. This has been a fun point of conversation. And I'd be curious if there's something besides a lens or a camera body or a flash that makes you a better photographer, something you carry around in your camera bag.
Yeah, so I thought about this for a while, and it's really the case itself. So we use hard cases instead of bags. Okay. And we had, about a year ago, we had a company named Jason Cases make a custom case for us. And so we sent them all our gear. And we overnighted it to them. They had it for a day. It measured everything and then sent it back. So it was gone for 2 days. And then it took them about a month to build the case. And it has we spent a lot of time kind of going through lists of things that we were going to need at shoots, whether that be entertainment or wedding. And it has a slot for everything that we would need at one of these shoots. So you think SD cards, camera bodies, flashes, flash modifiers, the whole thing. And so it's got a specific slot for all those things. And we really wanted something that, we could go to the airport because we travel quite a bit and turn over to Southwest and say, hey, we want to check this and not have to worry about, it getting thrown around and that kind of thing. And it's been a huge time saver for us as we prep for shoots because we can literally open it up. And if there's an empty slot, that means we're missing something. It was a great investment that we made, and I would recommend Jason it was one of the best customer experiences that we've had.
Wow.
With anyone.
Wow, that's a big statement. And I pulled up their website as you're talking, jasoncases.com, very simple. And it looks very similar to Pelican. So what's the difference between the Pelican case and being able to customize the foam in a Pelican case and what they do at Jason?
So Jason does these, and Pelican may have done this recently. I haven't looked at their stuff recently, but Jason does a overlay on top of the foam cutting.
Yeah, I see that.
And the overlay has the focal length of lenses. It has the name of the cameras. It has whatever the piece of gear is, it names it.
Okay.
And so everything has a certain slot, and it's engraved with our logo and the whole deal inside. So, you talk about showing up to a shoot, and, if we show up, we've done this several times now, and we show up to a shoot where we haven't worked with this particular client before, and we open the case up, and, everyone's kind of oohing and aahing over the case. It just kind of gives you that first level of trust when you walk in the door, besides you being competent. It's like, okay, well, they have this, and they wouldn't have it if they didn't know what they were doing. So it's been helpful to us in that way too.
Yeah, well, and to your earlier point, the idea of being able to trust those cases as they're being loaded onto a plane, that's a huge one. That's really great. All right, we'll link to those in the show notes as well, jasoncases.com. And let's jump into kind of our primary topic for the day, which is centered around entertainment photography. And maybe just to kind of bring our listeners up to speed and give a little bit of context to how you see this genre of entertainment photography, will you kind of define that for us and explain what elements of it you're involved in?
Absolutely. So I would define entertainment photography as capturing the people and elements and events that define our culture.
Oh,
and
I like that.
As a result, the images that are captured of those people or events can become culture defining themselves. And so the way that I like to illustrate this is, think of an award show, whether it be the AMAs or the Billboard Awards or the Grammys or the Oscars from the past 5 or 10 years. And think of an iconic moment. And, everyone kind of has an iconic moment they've thought about, somebody winning this award or somebody, ruining something about the show or a great collaboration. And then you think about it, and the image that you have in your mind of that moment is a photo that somebody took of that culture defining moment. It's kind of the thumbnail, if you will, of that memory in your head.
Yeah, that's true.
And so again, as a result, the images that are captured can become culture defining. And so I've kind of been heavily involved in the music element of that, award shows and concert tours and festivals. But I kind of define it as the capturing of people and events that define our culture.
That's really cool. I love the definition. Again, very succinct in the way that it describes a lot, all in a relatively short amount of time. Pretty powerful definition. And then you're specifically involved in the music side of it primarily, correct? Are there any elements of it that you get involved in from time to time?
Primarily the music side of things. Definitely everything is music related. So we've done a couple, we'll go on a commercial set and shoot some stills for the artists content wise, but the artists that, have been there are always music artists. So music related, definitely.
Okay. So what led you to this? And I know that I want to get into the kind of the nitty gritty of the genre itself, but what was it specifically about music photography that drew you in, makes you want to focus on this particular genre?
I think I love being a part of something so massive. There's something about being at the show, a moment happening like we talked about, and knowing that you're one of the ones that the client entrusted with capturing that culture defining moment. And also at award shows and festivals specifically, there's a huge team of photographers, whether that be Getty or whether that be the people that the actual promoter has hired, that are absolutely incredible at their craft. And one of the things that I really like about that element of it is being able to go talk to these guys face to face. It's you follow these people on Instagram for forever, and their work is unbelievable, and they've captured so many of these moments that you have in your head, and being able to work alongside them and shoot alongside them, and then go up and ask them, introduce yourself, and ask for advice if there's time. that's one of my favorite parts of it too. But I think, being at the show and shooting, I have a specific memory of a time when I was shooting Coldplay at the stadium, Soldier Field in Chicago. And I was in the pit and we were shooting Coldplay, and it started to downpour.
Oh.
And they were playing while it was raining. And I have some great shots of them playing in the rain with, people's cell phones up in the air with the photo and with the lights on. And it's moments like that I love.
Oh man. Yeah. I'm scrolling through Instagram, hoping to land on the image here. And so I can see what you're referencing, but that sounds incredible. And, to your earlier definition, the opportunity to be involved in culture defining moments, it's such a powerful idea when you frame it that way. What's one of the big, besides the one that you just described, what's another big standout moment that you would even frame or label a culture defining moment that you had the opportunity to photograph?
Yeah, I think, if we're looking at my Instagram here, it's a May 1st post. Okay. And it was the Billboard Awards this past year, and Taylor Swift opened it and had the opportunity to talk to some people who had watched her rehearsal prior to it, and was able to really spend some time with the photo team that I was working with there to kind of map out where we wanted to be in relation to the TV cameras. And I just love the set of images that we were able to capture. And that kind of goes to the planning aspect of things, which we can talk about a little later, but that's another big one for me.
Yeah. Well, and we'll link to this post in the show notes, but I've got it pulled up here. And that first shot, it's almost like she is interacting with you specifically. You definitely placed yourself in a really great spot, and there's a great series of images there we'll link to in the show notes for everybody so that they can see. How do you even break into the entertainment photography industry these days? Because I can imagine that there are plenty of people who would be like, yeah, I want to be their photographer. I want to be there shooting these concerts and photograph this artist. So you probably have a good bit of competition. How do you even get into it?
So we started and I say we, it was a buddy of mine and me from college. And we started a publication here in Memphis in 2015 called 901 Music. And we took the live edit workflow that we had developed and applied it to our coverage of music events across the country. And so the goal was to go out and cover these huge pop shows and garner the fans that we, kind of have follow us from covering those pop shows, and then go back home to Memphis and cover smaller local shows in order to bring awareness to the Memphis music scene.
Wow.
And so we started that. And once the publication got to a certain size or following, we were able to pretty much cover any event that we wanted to cover when we applied for it. And so going to these events and shooting created opportunities for us to meet publicists and managers and creative directors. And those relationships kind of brought us into the world of doing it more frequently. So again, it's the relationship piece, but I think for someone wanting to get into it, finding a publication or a newspaper or a magazine in your town that doesn't currently or maybe is looking for a new photographer for events, and trying to get press passes to go shoot them at the if it's a club show or if it's an arena show, depending on your city. And then just kind of working your way up. And as you do that, you'll develop relationships that will lead places.
But I want to get back to the publication. And by the way, for those of you listening in, you can also check out 901 Music on Instagram. It's just 901, the numbers, and then the word music. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. Again, some really great imagery there. When you started that, was the goal to kind of add value to the local industry? Was that the driving factor? What was the motivation behind it?
Yeah, again, I say my buddy and I were in college, and I think there was that. Initially, I think it was just, hey, it would be fun to go shoot concerts, and then once we kind of realized that we were kind of okay at it,
yeah,
we thought, hey, this would be a great opportunity to bring awareness. We had several friends that were trying to break the Memphis music scene. And, they were playing smaller club shows and that kind of thing in Memphis. And as we were going out, I think of a specific example. We went out and covered One Direction at the stadium in Chicago. And we garnered a ton of fans. I think we had several million impressions from that show, from the guys retweeting stuff that we had posted and that kind of thing. And we got tons of followers from it. And we came back and we covered one of our buddies' shows in Memphis the next week, and people were commenting on it and that kind of thing. And that was the point where we really realized that we, had created something that could make a difference in Memphis.
So is that still one of the biggest sources then of work for you, is that brand?
It is. It's a huge relationship builder for us. And, we'll go out and I don't shoot a whole lot for 901 Music anymore. We have a photographer in Nashville, a photographer here in Memphis, and then a photographer in Birmingham currently.
Oh, wow.
That shoot for us in those cities. But, it is a relationship builder for us. And it's been fun to use that as a relationship builder, and then also bring, people to see Memphis in a different light a little bit.
But when you talk about relationships, though, I mean, if somebody literally has no connections whatsoever to the music scene, I mean, maybe there's a second or third or fourth degree connection of some kind, but who would you recommend that they go to first? Because again, I can imagine that if somebody has any idea where to go, they're going to that person. So that these people, these connections are bombarded with wannabe photographers. They're like, I want to shoot this concert for you. How do they get started with these relationships?
Yeah, I would say, again, I would go and look for, is there a newspaper? Is there a magazine? Is there some sort of publication? Is there an online publication or a blog in your city that you can go and contact and say, hey, my name is such and such, and, I would love to cover such and such a show at, whatever venue it is in your city coming up, and see if they can request a press pass from either the venue or the artist publicist.
Yep.
And for you, and then you can go shoot the shows. And that's primarily how I've seen people break into the industry and kind of have started to go. I'm married and don't have a huge desire to go on tour, or at least long tours and live on a bus for half the year, but
right.
That's kind of how I've seen people break into the industry this way, is going and shooting press stuff. And then you build relationships with publicists and artist managers and that kind of thing just by doing that. So kind of like anything else, you've kind of got to start small and maybe do some stuff for cheap or free and then work your way up.
Yep. Totally makes sense. Talking about working your way up, let's get into a little bit more technical side of things here with the photography itself. By the way, I have to highlight, since we're going to be talking about how to create a great concert photograph, I have to highlight a post that I've got pulled up from June 4th on the 901 Music account. This stunning picture of 70,000 people at CMA Fest with a kind of a blue hue from the lighting to it. It's just an absolutely incredible shot. So props to you all for that. And I think that's actually, it looks like it's your picture specifically too. But I'm curious to get your take on what makes a good concert photograph. And this is probably a pretty broad question. I know we have limited time, but what would you say are a few elements of a good concert photograph as somebody is maybe trying to break into that industry?
Yeah, I think the first is, and these aren't all settings to gear answers, but I think they're all very important. So the first one I would say is external elements. So if you're starting in a club show, and I say a club show, that's like a 500 capacity venue.
Okay.
And so if you go in and you start at a club show, what I've found is that a lot of times you have these LED lights that create color on the stage. And then you've got a stage wash, which is, from behind that lights up the stage or those who are performing.
Yep.
And a lot of times the LEDs are daylight balanced and the stage wash is tungsten balanced in these smaller venues, which leads to an interesting shot. So, early on, a lot of the stuff that we did was black and white because, it was almost impossible to get skin tone correct with two different white balances. So, knowing that, and I always recommend people, before you go shoot a show somewhere, go to another show there, buy a cheap ticket, go in and see what the lighting setup is and, see how you want to tackle it. Always having an idea before you go in is very helpful. And then gear, I hear a lot of people talk about when you want to break into photography, the easiest thing to do is just to grab whatever camera you have around the house, even if it's an iPhone, and just start shooting. And I definitely agree with that. But I think in the music industry specifically, you're shooting in low light a lot of times. And so you've got to have a camera body and lenses that can handle that type of environment. And so, I've kind of got a list of gear that I recommend to people that ask me when they want to start out. But, things that like a full frame camera and lenses that have a lower aperture so that you can let more light in and that kind of thing. Those things are super important. And then secondly, I would say access and trust and kind of getting beyond the photo pit or the soundboard. And so when you start shooting shows for press, like we talked about earlier, depending on the artist, you'll either probably be in the photo pit, which is right in front of the stage, or you'll be at the soundboard. And so kind of getting beyond those two things, because they'll approve, 10, 15 photographers, depending on the artist, to shoot a show in each city. But, those 10 or 15 people, assuming that they have good gear, are going to get pretty similar shots. And so once you have that trust within those relationships, you can also get better access to get shots that other people can't get. And so a good concert photograph kind of goes beyond the photo pit, as I say, and kind of has a little bit more access element to it. And then finally, the third thing I would say is planning. Knowing the artists and songs I'm shooting. This is a big one for me that I recommend a lot. If you're going to go see an artist and you're going to shoot the show, know kind of their popular songs. Go on Apple Music or go on Spotify and listen to 5 or 6 of their most popular songs and kind of get a vibe for it, because chances are if there's a drop in a song or it, starts to get upbeat, the lighting is going to change as well. So knowing the song when you go shoot is super helpful to you as a photographer. And then I would say, if you can, do a site visit beforehand. Like I said, go to the venue, buy a cheap ticket, go see the venue and kind of figure out where you're going to be and what the lighting looks like. And then, once you get into the award show or festival space, if there are opportunities for you to see the artist rehearse, like we talked about with Taylor earlier, that's even more helpful, because in those environments, a lot of times you have moving TV cameras. And so you've got to figure out where the artist is going to be. Are they going to start in the audience and go up on the stage? And where is the TV camera or cameras? And you've got to work around them so that you're not in the TV camera shots. And so all these things kind of help you to see beyond the obvious and be better than someone who would just walk in the room with no prep.
Yeah, because you make a good point. Somebody's just standing there in the pit, can point their, I have this new iPhone 11 Pro. It's an absolutely amazing camera.
Laura bought one last week and it's amazing.
Isn't it crazy? Oh my goodness.
It is.
But they can point that or any number of camera phone or phone cameras, I guess you could say, up at the stage and get a halfway decent picture. Jill, my girlfriend, and I just had the opportunity to see Sting and John Mayer in concert, and a pretty small.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great. They were both amazing, wonderful musicians, great performance, good presence on stage. But it was a pretty small venue and relatively close. And some of the stuff that I was able to shoot, again, just with, and at the time it was just the iPhone 10, was, it's surprising how good these things are. So you got to go the extra mile in order to create something that the average individual with their fancy phone is not going to be able to capture. I know that you referenced 3 points. The way that I was taking notes here as you were talking, I actually wrote down 4 different things. So external elements, being aware of lighting. And I'm curious, with that mixed lighting, I know that potentially that could be challenging, but doesn't it also kind of make the imagery interesting?
It does. It depends on your artistic choice in the editing process.
Okay.
A lot of things you can fix in post. We edit in Lightroom specifically, but a lot of things you can fix in post. But I would encourage someone starting out to go look at some of the photos that a big award show or a big festival posts, and kind of look and see what elements of those you like, and kind of try to develop your own style to it.
Okay.
Our style, I say our with 901 Music, is really kind of vibrant and colorful and those things. And kind of the thing that I hammer home with our guys is skin tone. And skin tone above all else. We want the skin tone to be correct.
Yeah.
And that's just an artistic choice that I've made. Some people can go a little bit more out there with it, but I would rather turn something black and white than have the skin tone be off, just personally.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. So lighting, being aware of the lighting. And I love that little note that you added earlier with the tie to music, that lighting is going to change, and being aware of that's really great. But awareness of the lighting situation, taking the time to scout ahead of time, being aware of the external elements. The second thing was the significance of gear. And you said you had a list of equipment that you would normally recommend to a photographer, but I'm curious, what camera body do you particularly use?
So we use two. We're Canon, so we use 5D Mark IVs.
Okay.
And then I also have a Leica Q2.
Oh wow!
We just bought about a month ago, and I use that for a lot of backstage and red carpet stuff.
Yeah.
It's a smaller camera, so it's not as intimidating sometimes as you walking up to talent with a big DSLR with a flash on it. So it kind of allows you to get some more intimate shots that you wouldn't maybe normally be able to get.
And then access and trust. Does this really simply go back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the development of relationships on an ongoing basis? Or do you have to sometimes kind of work quickly? Because I can imagine some of these venues you're shooting at, you're seeing or meeting people that you haven't known before and may not even see again after that. Do you have tips and tricks to developing a sense of trust very quickly?
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to knowing the artist. So I follow a lot of artist managers and publicists, sometimes even tour managers on Instagram. And so I kind of know what these people look like, if that's not too creepy to say. And you can kind of go up to them, and if it's a manager and it's a smaller band and they're there, I've gone up to people before and said, "Hey, my name's Nathan, covering the show with 901 Music tonight. Great show, love the atmosphere. Just wanted to introduce myself. Here's my card. If you guys ever need any content creation stuff, give me a shout. I'd love to bid for it," and that kind of thing. And then more practically, if you're in the pit, one of the biggest things that I always try to do is kind of just be kind to the security guards.
Yeah.
They're in the pit, and they obviously have to work most of the shows there. So chances are they probably don't like the type of music. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But going up and just introducing yourself. "Hey, I'm Nathan. I'm going to be shooting. Let me know if I get in your way. I want to stay out of your way as much as possible. Thanks for being here, and thanks for keeping everyone safe." And just that initial saying hey really allows you to kind of get where you need to get. And somebody who is running in their last minute and kind of barging around and that kind of thing probably is going to have a little less luck than you taking the time to build those small relationships.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I think about doing the very thing you just did, the idea of thanking the security guard for what they do. Imagine how little they actually get that from people, and just making the extra little bit of effort to comment on the significance of what they're doing. It could literally change their evening, and then they're going to make way for you to be able to photograph, which is just brilliant. So, and the great thing about this approach to relationships is that it can come from a genuine place too. I think it really is bothersome to me, honestly, the amount of just kind of surface level BS, for lack of a better description, that you see in work interactions or business related interactions, including in our industry, sadly. I see it quite a bit, and I just genuinely want to connect with people. And it kind of drives me crazy when people aren't willing to go beyond that surface level and make an effort. And for me, it comes from a genuine place to connect. I want to get to know somebody or just have a conversation or be kind to somebody or help them out, whatever it is. And right. I think regardless of the other person's response, if we maintain that value set consistently in the way that we engage with other people, it will make a big difference in the long run. So I love that you point that out. And then the last thing that I wrote down here was planning as a fourth element, knowing the artist, taking the time to listen to their work, the significance of how that might correlate with the lighting, I think is really, really great, and understand ultimately who you are shooting. I think that's, knowing our subject. This is relevant to literally any genre that involves people in one form or another. Knowing our subject, understanding the nuance of their personality or what it is that they do, and being able to incorporate that into the photography, so important. These are really great elements of concert photography, and great advice for us, especially people like myself who don't know a whole lot about it. But props to you again for creating really, really beautiful work. Thank you for making time for sharing with the podcast. And just in closing, one more time, if you don't mind sharing where our listeners can find you on social media and online, that would be really great.
Yeah, absolutely. We mentioned it earlier, but my site's getting rebuilt this fall. So It should be up mid to late November, but it will be nathanarmstrong.com. And in the meantime, I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Nathan Armstrong.
Perfect. We'll link to those in the show notes. And a shout out to Laura as well and her brand, nlaweddings.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Thanks again, Nathan, for making time for Bokeh.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Bokeh Podcast. Will you let us know what you thought by leaving a review of the podcast in the Apple Podcast app? And I'd love to hear from you personally with your thoughts about the podcast and suggestions about future topics and guests for the show. My email is nathan@photographersedit.com. The Bokeh Podcast is brought to you by Milu, the simplest way for photographers and coordinators to collaborate on shot lists and timelines for weddings, parties, and other amazing events. Visit Milu, MIILU.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Photographer's Edit, custom image editing for the professional photographer. Visit photographersedit.com.